Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of the Brutal Truth About Sales and Selling podcast. Today we're going to be talking about what's working today and also what's not working. And this is one of those episodes where you might want to have your manager give them a little hint about playing into this or listening in. Because what we're going to be talking about is not just what's working, but the things that aren't working. The KPIs gone crazy. The focus on the quantity and not the quality. And I think what's happening today is the quantity is taking away from the quality. So we're going to get into it. But before we do, I want to make sure you're checking out covideo.com. Covideo is the video way to send emails. It's the way to engage your market into you and what you do. A personalized video email cuts through all the noise. It's insanely effective. You got to try it. Give it a try. See how it works for you. Also, make sure you're checking out Pipedrive, pipedrive.com with the Brutal Truth coupon code. You get it for 1 month free to check it out. Connects up your calendar, your email, and all your CRM historical data. We need all that. So let's get into the interview with Jake Dunlap. And I think you're going to really enjoy this one. We get a little fired up. I think we're both pretty passionate about these topics. And I think everybody in sales is, because we hate to waste our time. Our time is our most valuable asset in sales. It's really all we have, our time and our skill. Speaking of skills, have you checked out B2B Check out the training courses. Prices are going up. Schedule a time if you're interested. Let's get into the interview. Hey, Jake, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, hey, I appreciate you having me, Brian. Looking forward to the conversation. I've been following you, not physically following you around your neighborhood, but I feel like I've seen what you're up to, and I'm into it. So, So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Jake Dunlap. I run a company called Scaled. We're a sales consulting and strategy company. I started the company about 6 years ago. After being a VP of sales at Glassdoor and a few other startups and building out sales organizations, just saw kind of this massive hole where as companies are scaling, sales needs love too. You've got marketing that gets marketing agencies and digital agencies and PR agencies, and finance gets auditing firms, and salespeople get training or sales teams. And so we've got about 25 people now between New York and Austin and all over the place. Really focused on kind of working with sales leaders and CEOs through different strategy, kind of working through different strategy problems with their business, and then also helping with a lot of the tactical execution. So I spent the last 6 years building this out. I'm from Kansas City. Unfortunately, we didn't make it to the Super Bowl this year, but I'm feeling good about next year. I've been all over since. So I just moved to Austin about 6 months ago, loving it down here. I'm so glad I wasn't in New York last week, but that is the not so brief high level on what I'm up to.
So give us some insight into what you're seeing in your customer base this year, and what are they looking forward to or scared of in 2019?
Well, I think what we've seen around sales technology in particular is that lots of companies have invested. If you look at what the sales technology LumaScape right now looks a whole heck of a lot like the marketing LumaScape looked like back in 2010. So I mean, we're at literally step one, and we have over 1,000 tools for sales teams. So one of the biggest things that I think is top of mind for sales leadership in particular is, look, I'm investing in these tools. All the data says I should be investing in these tools. I didn't grow up with these tools, and I'm outsourcing a lot of my knowledge to the sales operations team. So I don't even know really what can move the needle for my team, and really how to invest as these tools are also evolving so quickly. So to me, the teams that are going to win are going to be the teams that really focus on how do you harness the right sales technology? How do I have an understanding of the type of technology that's going to move the needle for my team? I think for sales leaderships, candidly, it's kind of one of those boring problems when you talk about technology with salespeople. But I think it is probably the most important piece for them to start to think about is, instead of throwing more bodies at the problem, how can I make the current people more effective and efficient?
Yeah, because I think people have been throwing a lot of entry-level people at the problem and kind of automating things that don't work. That's what I've seen.
Well, I think that's it. That's actually a great point, Brian. Let's take sales engagement platforms, right? And I think that's kind of like, I think almost like a linchpin of some of these, of like a tech stack now. It should be, at least. these tools were brought up, in 2015, 2016, and we were using them to just hit send all like it was Marketo or something. And guess what? It worked. It worked in 2015. Yeah. It worked in 2016. But guess what's happening to email now? It's like, I think the stat I saw last year, there were 269 billion emails sent. The problem is we over-engineered to email in a lot of our outreach because it was working, but yet we haven't corrected back now that email is less effective. And so you have to really look at these as more as workflow management tools as opposed to email tools. And I don't think most sales leaders are there yet. I think they still have that kind of mindset as it helps my team send more emails.
And that's it. And I think I predicted 2 years ago that was the year they burnt email, because I would get into someone's cadence and it's like every morning was like unsubscribe, unsubscribe, unsubscribe. I don't even know what you're talking about or why you're sending me email. And I think the robocalls are just killing cold calling, because I get like 30 of them a day.
Yeah.
So people aren't picking up unless they know it. And I think what's happening is that people have to go back to selling to people. And I think we lost that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's like now if I get the beautiful part about the cell phone, I haven't changed my number in 8 years, right? So I haven't lived in, I got my cell phone number in Phoenix. Since then I've lived in San Francisco, New York, and now Austin. So now I know if you're calling from 480, like there's no chance I know you because if you're not my friend and you're not my phone. But I actually, I think you're right about the robocalls, but I think still, when I talk to executives, Brian, I'd be interested on your take. And I asked them, I said, hey, how many emails do you get a day? Right. And they're like, I don't know, sales emails, 5, 10 a day. And I say, how many cold calls do you get from like a sales rep versus, someone trying to scam you out of your IRS money? Usually the answer I get is like a couple or one. So I really feel like the phone is actually kind of trading at a low for me, where because to your point, Brian, it is actually a chance to make somewhat of a connection if you can get through, right?
If you can get through.
Which is your point. But I still like the phone, and especially as email becomes, more and more difficult, at least as a diversification and a way to try to get someone on the phone. I was talking to a sales leader in Atlanta, 60-person team, and they set 40% of their meetings from the cold call.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not that the cold call is the end point, right? There's, multi-touch attribution of other things that are happening. But I think what happened is email works so damn good. We stopped doing calls. And now that it's not working, it's like, oh, wait, these people should pick up the phone or do something else. Like, oh man.
Yeah.
That's not for you.
Yeah. Because the robocalls are cell phone focused, and I'm cell phone only. The desk phone, people still have it. Some companies don't even have any of them.
Right.
And I think, yes, certain things work at different times with different people. Nothing's a sure thing. What are you hearing mostly from your clients as far as their top issues?
Well, I think in 2019, a lot of people are just trying to figure out how do we continue to scale other than just, again, adding more people. Right. And that, I talked a little bit before about technology. I think it's also about adapting to the buyer process, kind of how buyer behavior has changed, where people are coming to the table with more information to the process, into the sales, where it used to be salespeople's number one job was to, educate people and then sell to them. Well, when your buyer comes to the table and they know more about your competition than you do, that's a problem. And I feel like this is the year where we're going to have to, understand that sales job is always going to be a trusted advisor and to educate, but you're going to have to stay up to speed on what's happening in your space, because guess what? Your buyer has access to more information than they've ever had before. And if you look at what's happening with G2 Crowd and their site traffic and the number of reviews, it's skyrocketing. So I think it's this combination of how do we deal with a buyer that's a little bit more informed than salespeople have had to deal with in the past. So you can't just go into full-blown demo mode like you want to. And then, again, how do I make my team more, that's kind of on the effective side. And then on the efficiency side, it's okay, if we've got ways for them to be more effective with better, ways that we interact with customers, and to your point, being more human and really knowing the space that they sell into versus just being, demo bots, then, the efficiency is next. And that's really where a lot of technology can come into play.
And have you sensed this division of labor gone mad as being a solution or part of the problem?
Tell me more. What do you mean with division of labor?
It went from, when I got into sales, you had inside, outside.
Yep.
But inside was they did a lot of different things. It wasn't just getting new opportunities. It was handling calls, expediting things internally. And now we have information concierge, people who clean the database.
Yeah.
We have people who only give demos to new customers who have blonde hair and between 10 and 11 o'clock.
I got it, man. I got it. Okay. Yeah. So here's what I think the issue is. It's not that the concept of division in labor isn't a path. Meaning it's got to be dependent on your buyer. And so if you only sell to the enterprise, maybe the level of sophistication that you're going to need from someone, it's unrealistic to think that you could divide that up and have 5 people all be as proficient at certain parts of it. Whereas if something is, less value add, like sourcing leads, like I was in Istanbul last week doing a series of workshops, and I talked a lot about this, with their teams where they're building a lot of kind of, sales orgs, a little bit more old school, even the companies that are doing 40, 50 million where the salespeople still do everything. It's like, look, why are you paying salespeople to source leads?
Right.
Like that's insane. There's just so much efficiency to be gained. So my answer to the question is, I think we're going to continue to see division of sales roles as an okay thing. I think what I see more and more is that what it means to be in sales is what's actually shrinking. Meaning if we're taking account management and growth off of salespeople's plate, we're taking generating your own meetings off your plate, what it means to be in sales is just foundationally different than whenever, I started and when you started. I think the other role that we still haven't quite mastered that needs work is I've heard the word pursuit marketer or demand gen marketer, which is the marketing support for sales is a role that I feel like we still haven't actually specialized enough to have marketers that are actually well-versed in sales to better support sales teams. So I think we're going to continue to see division, but I think companies shouldn't just do it because, their VC told them to. They should really be smart and thoughtful about how they divide it. And I do think most marketing divisions, marketing sales is really kind of bleeding at the top of the funnel, really need to focus on building out kind of very specific roles to help enable sales more effectively with better content, with more specialized content to specific verticals. I feel like that's a big area of opportunity for a lot of companies.
And have you seen kind of a conflict between marketing and sales because people aren't converting the way they used to? I don't know about you, but I don't put my real email address in, or I don't put my real name or my real phone number in.
Wait, there's conflict between marketing and sales?
I've heard a rumor.
No, never. I think it's getting better. I think, look, maybe part of your question too, I think I'll answer it in maybe another way. I think what you have to do, marketing and sales have to have the same end goals. I think what we did whenever demand gen marketing came into kind of vogue in the early 2010s is we started the KPI. We didn't like brand as a KPI. Obviously, it's like, well, brand is tough too. I think we're kind of coming back to understanding the importance of brand, and I'll talk about that in a second. But what happened is once marketing automation started to, and we could start to track this stuff, we said, oh, well, now we have this way to track how leads come in, et cetera. So let's comp our marketing team on leads or MQLs. Right. And so we did that. And then because we had data and we had tools that could help us to do that. And I don't know, maybe it was the right thing to do at the time. But I think what I'm seeing more and more now, Brian, is that people are starting to align sales and marketing more toward the end goal, which is revenue or pipeline, which is, look, I don't care how many leads you drove or what they were. If they're not converting, then you're not doing marketing's not doing its job. Now, granted, there's the flip side, which is sales sales might suck too. I don't know. So I think the companies that are doing a great job are the companies that align sales and marketing's goals around what really matters, which is pipeline and revenue. And then I think the other kind of trend in marketing too is that I think we're starting to have a better appreciate. We over-engineered so far toward lead volume, like numbers that we kind of lost sight of brand. And we've kind of lost sight of actually the power of building something that drives more organic inbound in the mid and long game versus short-term lead forms and sacrificing kind of building long-term community that I think we're starting to see kind of come back in vogue. Where, yes, of course, we're focused on ways to drive leads and pipeline now, but as a brand, especially as B2B brands, they're so boring doing the same HubSpot play from 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I make an ebook, I turn it into a blog post, then share social media over the course of 3 months, so it's irrelevant. And so we ran those plays for so long, I feel like we really forgot about brand. And I think I'm seeing more and more B2B brands companies start to think about brand again, whereas we had over-engineered toward, kind of MQL lead, maybe over the last, 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, and I think that is exactly what happened. Is they looked at HubSpot, and all of a sudden, even if you read about what HubSpot done, that they kind of lower the bar of who they're targeting their content at, pretty much down to anybody. So that turns into a lead. They get credit for it. The sales department's now busy with it, has to process it, and it has nothing to do with what they sell. So it's just causing a problem, not solving a problem.
Yeah.
Are you finding a mismatch between when you talk to reps and then you talk to managers about reaching the real objective, which is revenue?
I mean, I don't know if it's any different than it has been. I remember in 2006, guys, 12 years ago, gosh. I remember that, at the role that I had, I was, the company I was in sales at the time, I did our own lead gen. We, closed our own deals and managed, our own growth for accounts. Look, I had stupid dial minimums then too. I had to, the dial, like what I had to do, I was selling mid-market deals, between 15 to 25,000 on average, 100 cold calls a day and 2.5 hours of talk time, 2 meetings set every single day, 100 dials, 2.5 hours of talk time. Didn't matter if one day you ran 4 meetings, so you had less, like that was the number. So I don't know if it's any different now. I will say, Brian, the one thing I do think is different is in 2006, there was really only 2 ways to reach people because LinkedIn barely existed then, right? It was in activities, right? It was like primarily it was based on calls, right? You weren't giving people email credit back in 2006. I think what we're seeing is that back in 2006, 7, 9, 10, et cetera, the activities were very call to action based. And they could be because we didn't have ways to influence people like LinkedIn or like, marketing helping to do different things. So we had activity tied directly to calls to action, and that made sense. But now what we're actually asking a lot of our sales development teams and salespeople to do is go and get active on LinkedIn and reach out to people on LinkedIn. And we're not really counting those influence type activities, and we're still giving people dial minimums. So I think I don't know if it's any different, where, reps back then hated it just as much as reps now. But I do think the wild card that didn't exist then is that we're using LinkedIn and other social channels to touch people. And that isn't an activity metric as much as an influence metric. And I think that's a really tough thing to quantify for people whenever they just want to track your dials and your emails.
And that's it. And when I was a rep, anytime I heard my manager talk about activity versus accomplishment, it was typically a red flag that either they didn't believe in you or they were trying to create activity that they thought would cause accomplishment. And because that's what Aaron Ross and Predictable Revenue told us to do. Aaron Ross, I credit Aaron Ross with starting a revolution, but also we haven't moved on from it yet. Well, I think the problem was he was in the tornado, despite what he says. I remember that time. I mean, there was no other CRM. And it was kind of like the wave. Every manager wants a CRM because when the rep leaves, there goes all the knowledge. And now, all of a sudden, if you're in the tornado, that works. But if you're not in the tornado, if you're a light breeze or it's dry and desertly, what matters is you still got to close a deal. And you can call all the people you want, and everyone fakes those KPIs, and management still doesn't believe that.
I've got some great stories for you on that. There was a rep. I'll digress for 2 seconds just because it's funny. I'll never forget. And this rep ended up being a killer rep. We would get flagged right whenever the team the phone system could monitor suspicious. And one of my reps had called this number 35 times and been on it for 30 minutes, and it's a fax machine. Yeah. Right. So it's I pulled him in the room. I'm like, Chris, what is? And he's like, I quit. And I'm like, dude, I'm not firing you. I'm like, stop doing this. And then I had another rep that literally gave new hires a list of 20 numbers they could call to get their talk time numbers and dials up.
Yeah.
And that's just what, and again, but guess what? It's still happening. people are still
Of course
doing.
it is. And managers don't believe, oh, my reps wouldn't do that.
No, God, no, of course not. Not you.
And I remember a manager said, oh, you have to report your number of face-to-face meetings every Monday. And everyone just made it up.
Oh, yeah, I met with Bob and Sue. Yeah, of course.
So doesn't that seem like just a game, a waste of time, like this 300% of pipeline into the CRM? And what it does is you're only working on that 30% that will close. And you're distracted by that 60% that won't close. I think it makes everything look the same instead of understanding where each person is in their decision process.
Yeah, I agree.
And I find it frustrating because it just seems like a game. And
yeah, it's the same game. I mean, like a lot of this stuff. I mean, again, Brian, like you know how it is, man. Like it's I don't know how it goes away, right? We just have different. I don't know. Maybe we're just like looking at because we have tools now where we think that we're doing a better job of it, and not now. No, we're only making people do things. There's a few companies I've talked to that are getting closer, and something you and I have talked about. That's why I'm a big fan of. I feel like moving toward with a lot of lead gen, moving toward the first outcome as where the starting point is for how you measure activity, which can be a connect or a meaningful conversation in particular. And there's really easy ways to define that. And don't get me wrong. And I would say the good part about moving toward connect or meaningful conversation that kind of helps to get you to the right person or helps to kind of like move the deal forward to get the meeting, is that, look, because we're using the call monitoring, like it is a little bit easier to not fudge. It's like, look, I connect, your goal, Jake, is not 200 activities today. It's to talk to 5 people.
Yeah.
And that's your goal. And because we know if you talk to 5 people, usually one of them converts to a meeting. And I feel like if we can start to move more away from these activity metrics that again, we're from a time when we weren't asking reps to do influence-based activities like LinkedIn, then I think we actually get closer to rep and manager alignment around this stuff, as opposed to continuing to focus on activity metrics that look, and I've seen the data from thousands of reps across our clients. The variation in activity to appointment set by rep is astounding. We're all humans, like we're all different or better at different parts of it. So that's why moving to connections to me is like such a, it's such a better look. Is it perfect? No, it's like comp plans. There's no such thing as a perfect one, but I feel like it's at least a step in the right direction to saying, look, your job is to produce micro outcomes that then produce better outcomes. Yeah.
Right. Because I think the mistake managers make is they tell the reps what the activity should be. I have no problem with managers monitoring activity, but as soon as you tell them it's a certain number of dials, connects, minutes, guess what they do? They do exactly what you want to see, and everyone's under this delusion of accomplishment. I don't understand why we can't have a dashboard that is based off of accomplishment. Okay, we can transcribe these calls. If you hire people that are motivated by money, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do the things that make them money.
Yeah, but that's not what predictable revenue tells us to do, Brian. It tells us to measure, you do X number of activities to generate X number of leads, to generate X number of MQLs, to generate X number of SQLs, to generate X number of opportunities, to generate X number of proposals.
That's kind of like, let's listen to the bat boy for the Yankees to determine how the Yankees win the World Series. Right.
Well, it worked. I mean, the key is like, look, what I will say is like there was a time and place in like the late 2000s or the early 2010s where like whenever all your activity is focused on call to actions, I think it's like, okay, like it makes more sense that activity is somewhat better linked to your point that people fake it and all this, somewhat better linked to an outcome. Yeah. Now, the activities we have people doing aren't actually calls to action. And so therefore, there's, what's that noise ratio in there to even think about activities as a top of funnel metric? And I think it worked for a time, and VCs loved it, right? Because it's like, look,
it's
your
a
business
machine. It doesn't involve human beings.
Oh my, well, your business is paid by numbers. You're coin operated. I just dumped this in. So like, look, as a VC, I get it. I totally get why we went this way. And look, and honestly, it's really easy to be a lazy sales VP or sales leader when it's like, well, look at my forecast, CEO. Like, it's this. It just adds up. And you're like, yeah, like, that's great. and then it doesn't add up, and you mess up your quotas. And anyway, there's like, I'll just go off on a whole other tangent if we keep going down this track.
Well, I mean, do you think that AI or being able to come up with a dashboard that's based off of quality versus quantity, where there's signals that the person's interested, that you're getting feedback from the customer, that things are in the priority of closure?
So, man. Yeah, dude, I think so, man. And I've seen there's a bunch of platforms that are moving there that really just help you to get the. I mean, my goal would be that hopefully with AI we can eliminate the pipeline meeting as well too. Like that would be the other one. If we can eliminate the pipeline meeting or make it 5 minutes, so salespeople can like get back to work. That would be great too. But I actually think so. I think the answer is yes. I think AI is actually going to do a lot of that, where it's going to say, look, we know at a deal this size, you need to have about this many people involved, and you need to be meeting with them at about this frequency or something like that. And each tool is kind of doing this a little differently. I think that that's really helpful for a sales rep to say, oh, okay, cool. Like, okay, yeah. Oh man, you're right. I don't have this person identified. I should go and do that. And again, it's based on these smaller outcomes of getting people involved or having a meeting or having an interaction with someone or the frequency of interactions. And helping to guide the rep on maybe some next steps and things to do. So I actually think AI and different things I'm seeing in different forecasting tools, I think are going to be great things for salespeople if they can trust them. And they should, and candidly, they should trust them, because what's the alternative? You just do what you think is best versus like what data says, and it's a combination of what you think and what data says. So I really think AI over the next 2 to 4 years is going to have a really big impact, hopefully, in focusing people on doing the right types of activities versus just volume.
Well, that's it. I got to believe that every rep comes in every day and they look at their CRM, whatever view or tool they're using, and there's probably 50 to 100 to-dos. Now, are they in the order of likelihood to closure, or is there any order to them?
No, it's tasks. It's just
right.
Tasks.
It's tasks. And that makes the assumption that they're all kind of equal. But they're not equal. They're not, it might be, an out-of-work consultant, a guy in prison, right? Or, the VP of sales at IBM or something. They're not all equal.
Yeah, I agree.
So what do you see as your superpower, Jake? I mean, if there was one thing that really differentiates you from everybody else, or the number one thing that really separates great salespeople, including yourself?
Well, I think there's two pieces in there. I think curiosity. I've always been a learner, right? I love to read, and even if I didn't love to read, I like to just understand how things work. And so, I think like a lot of people, I didn't, maybe I didn't originally plan to go into sales, but I just love talk. I love to like.
You didn't.
I love to learn. I mean, but dude, look, I was doing telemarketing in college. I was selling vacation packages, man. I cut my teeth. So when I came out of college, I was already. I was deep in it. Yeah. But I think I'm a naturally curious person, and honestly, I just applied a lot of that to sales. So I was, really early. I think I was much better than people at running a discovery process because I was like interested. I'm genuinely interested in like what you do and what your goals are. Like I genuinely whether it was I cared and I was interested in it. So I think my ability to be curious and not have an agenda, I think, is what separated me throughout my sales career from other salespeople. And then, when you ask about superpower, I think it's just every day I strive to align my true self with my forward-facing self. And I think I do a pretty good job of not having things that are out of sync and trying to be as authentic to myself as I can be every single day. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I see a lot of people have to put on, there's this professional person, their personal person, this other person, my PTA person, and I just don't do it, man. I just don't have time for it. I've got too much stuff going on to try to be 8 different people. So I think, and then maybe these two things are go in step, because that also allowed me, whenever I was working with a client, to say, look, man, this isn't the right fit for you. Whether I'm going to make this sale or not, I'm going to try to help you and just tell you what I think is the right thing for you. It worked out a lot more than it didn't. So it's that kind of combination of curiosity and just really genuinely wanting to help people get on the right path, from a client standpoint, that I think, separates, myself and even, the work that we try to bring at scale, to our clients.
Well, that curiosity could give you a sense of what are these people really going to do? Because they're not telling you the 100% truth. They're telling you what you want to hear. And if you're not curious, you're not digging in, you're not understanding what's driving it. Is this something you're going to do this month or next year?
Yeah, and I think that maybe that would be it. And I think my team or people who've worked for me in the past, like, I have no problem getting uncomfortable real quick. Like, I don't, as soon as I hear a fluff question, I'm going to lean right into it. Yeah. I mean, like, look, I hear in your voice this, and this. How do we get past? Like, I think that was it. And I learned some techniques really early on in my sales career that, what happened, Brian, I just got sick of that feeling when you hang up the phone and you left something on the table. And every salesperson knows what I'm talking about. You hang up the phone and you go, oh, man, I should ask this question.
Yeah.
I didn't lean in. I started to hate that feeling more than anything in the world. Therefore, I was willing to just I'd rather make someone else uncomfortable than me feel bad about myself after a call. Well, some random stranger in Yakima, Washington that I'm selling into versus me feeling bad about myself. And I think it's that ability to get uncomfortable and, and have those difficult conversations that I think a lot of salespeople never get to, and it's why they don't become A players.
Yeah, it's like from The Godfather. He likes to hear bad news immediately instead of delusionally believe that something's going to happen.
Yeah, I think being pessimistic is also a good trait of a sales. Like, I don't think anything. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just very pessimistic about every deal. And it's more of like I just have no opinion on it. I don't have an opinion if it's going to close or not. Just the facts are the facts. And as long as I've laid everything out on the table, like, what's going to happen is going to happen. And I've directed action. I've done what I can do. And I think that, therefore, that like removes a lot of the emotion from it. If it doesn't close, it doesn't close. If it closes, great, next. And you just move on.
Great. Hey, Jake, so who's the ideal client for you and your company?
Yeah, I mean, we really have, I'd call it, two very specific clients that I think we add a lot of value to. It's that company that is going through either their first or second phase of scaling, that kind of first push from 5 to 20 million and things start to break, as you operationalize, or those companies that are trying to go from, 40 or 50 million to 100 million, and, they need to go build out a process to go up market. So it's usually companies that are going through some type of need, to operationalize a new part of their business or the existing part of their business to scale. And then more and more, we're working with larger organizations that are just trying to bring more modernization, whether it's around sales technology or process, to their teams. So for us, it's if a company is going through those scaling phases, hence the name Scaled, right? It's very deliberate, and SCALED was taken. I think that's where we add the most value. If you're just trying to figure it out, and my advice is like, look, dude, you got to buckle up and just make it happen for your first 25 customers. Now, once you're ready to start to scale, we can step in, and then once you're kind of going to that later stage of scaling of man, we've done everything we can. How do we think about increasing rep productivity by 5%, or how do we think about finding new markets? I think we do a great job of partnering with companies there. And
where do they go to connect with you and learn about the company?
Yeah, I mean, look, for me, find me on LinkedIn. It's Jake Dunlap, so /Jake Dunlap. Check out the website, scaled, SKALED.com. And then you can find me on Instagram too, Jake_Dunlap_. But LinkedIn, I'm on there every day, posting every day like you, interacting with a lot of the folks who reach out. So it's always a good channel to find me on.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. I had a lot of fun. I love mixing it up and talking about the core things and cutting through the crap of sales. I think too many people talk about philosophy and style, but very few people really push back and say, like, what is really working today? What is worth our time? And what is a waste of time? And I think the KPI thing just goes mad. It turns into this cycle where both sides know they're faking it, so they just keep increasing it. Now, activity is important. You have to take action to sell. Now, what actions with who? Sometimes we get wrapped around the axle. Analysis paralysis. So getting moving is a good thing, but just moving for the sake of moving doesn't pay off in the long run. It gets you moving and gets you calling, and you have to do it. But if you focus on the ones that really matter, the ones that will close, the ones that want your product, that are going to buy it, it's just a matter of time, those are the ones that invest your time in and really get the payoff that you want. If you're having any issues with selling, if you're not making the kind of money you want, if you're not crushing it, if you're not number one in your company, go to b2brevenue.com. The training courses, it's not just courses, it's not just content. It's community where we get twice a month meetups and unlimited one-on-one coaching. So you get to talk to me, and we talk about your deals and how to apply the most advanced selling approach ever known to man to close it. Now, this isn't from some failed SDR turned sales trainer. I sold 25 years straight. I was number one rep probably at least 30% of the time, Couldn't keep it up that much, but I worked hard, but I worked smart. I really understood how companies buy, how to evaluate them, how to determine if they're going to buy, and then if you feel they will buy, how to get them through that process. It's not what everyone else teaches, the smiling and dialing and activity-based stuff. It's the skill-based stuff. No one else teaches it. No, none of these failed people. Trust me, if someone hasn't been in sales 10 years, I mean sold for 10 years, not sold sales training for 10 years. This is the stuff that you really have to have lived, and nobody else teaches it because there's no incentive. So you can come and learn how to close the complex sale, how to start conversations and get meetings, and how to build up that pipeline and close the year strong. Come on, let's sign up. We'll see you next time. Hey, make sure you stop by LinkedIn, like one of my videos, give a little comment, a little share, a little who's your podcaster.